smile. Smile on your brothers, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Some may come and some may go. We must surely pass. When the one who left us here returns to us at last, we are for the moment sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody gets together, try to love one another right now.
200 people here in Wilson Park. So, can you tell me something about what's happening here today and who you are?
Well, I'm Jessie Crockett. We just came together today to bring awareness and to take action against what is happening in our southern borders. We believe families belong together, and separating children from parents isn't okay. So pretty much we're just gathering here to protest what has happened and to let people know what they can do to help stop it or make it better.
Looks like you have a very good turnout here. There are more people than I expected.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really happy with the response.
It's nice to see the community turning out for something like this. So, do you have any other thoughts? Or
Nope, I'm really thankful for the turnout, and I'm glad that everybody was able to participate.
thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. If there are any speakers, if you could come down to the front. I just want to thank everyone for being here today. My name is Jessie Crockett, and we are going to have several speakers. I would just like to welcome them and thank them for being here. We will begin by hearing from Reverend Julie Lepp.
We are gathered here in this spot to make a statement. We are people from different classes, from different faiths, from different backgrounds, but we come together with one idea, that no one is illegal. All humans are equal. And the prayer of my body today is to stand with you, regardless of faith or belief. We can believe that love is beyond belief. We can love our neighbors. We can keep families together and make a stand. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence. I want you to imagine that the person next to you is missing their child. I want you to imagine what that child might feel like if that child was separated for 6 weeks from their parent. 6 years old, I heard it on NPR. I want you to imagine the separation and the loss and the fear. And I want you to reach out in your heart with love and compassion, recognizing that we are all one human family. We are all a part of something greater than ourselves. Whether you believe in God, the Buddha, the ground of being, we all are people who have compassion and love for our neighbors. So let's join us now in this time of silence as we reach out our compassion, our love, and prayer that we can make a change in this world, in this country, and in this state. Do you feel the power of that connection? Yes. Yes. Do you feel the power of your conviction? Yes. We are not going to let anyone co-opt the values that belong to all of us. I have heard different faith traditions, the Methodists, the Unitarians, the Catholics, all across our faith traditions that this is wrong. And if you can't name evil, then you can't speak at all. Let's name it and let's do something about it with love. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Salika Ducksworth-Lawton, and today I represent the Chippewa Valley ACLU and the state of Wisconsin's ACLU. ACLU in the house! In an enormous victory, a federal judge on June 26, 2018 ordered the reunification of thousands of parents and children forcibly separated by the Trump administration. The ACLU had sought the nationwide injunction to halt the practice of separating families and to immediately reunite them. This crisis is not over until the Trump administration complies with last night's order and all families are reunited. That is why the ACLU and our partners are holding a mass mobilization at the courthouse where migrants are being prosecuted in Brownsville, Texas. We are taking to the airwaves with a national TV ad urging the government to expeditiously reunite families. On Thursday, a mobilization started in front of the Brownsville Federal Court, where zero-tolerance prosecutions are taking place. Today, ACLU joins Move On, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and other partners to co-sponsor a nationwide call to action to keep pressure on the Trump administration to comply with the court's order and stop separating families. Rallies like this and marches have been planned for over 1,000 communities across this country. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected in front of the White House at the DC anchor. The ACLU is launching a 7-figure ad buy tomorrow, demanding the Trump administration comply with the court order and immediately reunite people. The ad, titled "Children Are Waiting," will begin airing on NBC tonight on NBC, CNN, and HDTV nationally. A Spanish language version will air nationally on Univision and Telemundo. The ads send a message to the Trump administration that they cannot hide from the truth that they created this crisis. They cannot hide from the truth that asking for asylum is legal in the United States. And this crisis will not be solved until the Trump administration complies with the court's decision and reunites the families they tore apart, and family separations and indefinite detention at the border comes to a halt. Thousands of families have been torn apart by the inhumane and brutal practice of family separation, designed to scare other families from seeking refuge in the United States. The zero-tolerance policy has sparked public outrage, which has been critical to the success of the legal and advocacy efforts. We need to continue to demand the Trump administration be accountable. The ACLU also says on the Muslim ban, the U.S. Constitution says freedom and justice for all, not some. The U.S. Constitution says everyone has a right to due process. Our parents' generation fought this fight for 150 years. Now we take up the mantle. This is our country. We are fighting to redeem the soul of America. This is not the first time the Supreme Court has been wrong or has allowed official racism and xenophobia to continue rather than standing up for it. As with those rulings, as with Plessy and Dred Scott and Korematsu, history will judge the decision in the Muslim ban harshly. The The decision to uphold Trump's Muslim ban is a failure of historic proportions. In 1944, the Supreme Court decision in Korematsu upheld Executive Order 9066, allowing the government to implement a grossly discriminatory Japanese-American imprisonment policy based on false assertions of national security. It's one of the most shameful chapters in U.S. history, and this decision now joins it. As more than 100,000 people were rounded up, many remained silent in 1944. It is on each of us to demand accountability and action from our representatives to ensure our country does not repeat its worst mistakes. It is ultimately the people of this country who will determine its character and its future. In the first 24 hours of the Muslim ban, two of the defining themes of the Trump presidency emerged: his determination to stamp anti-Muslim bigotry on national policy, and the key roles of the courts and the public in stopping him. Today, as we stand, the courts have failed. And so the public is needed more than ever. We must make it crystal clear to our elected representatives: if you are not taking action to rescind and dismantle Trump's Muslim ban, you are not upholding this country's most basic principles of freedom and equality. These representatives work for us. They work for us. Rescind this ban or we will fire you. The most important things that we can do as individuals: vote. 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 The second most important thing: call those representatives. Call your senators. Talk to them. Send the emails. Vote. You need to vote and let your representatives know you don't care what party they are. They cannot stand for this. In 1965, Jimmy Lee Jackson died for that right to vote that we have. In 1963, John L. Lewis got his head cracked for that right to vote we have. Don't let it slip away. There's a reason why they work so hard to take it away from you. Voting is a weapon. The people who are registered and vote on the day of the election control power in this country. There is no excuse not to vote. I don't want to hear any excuses not to vote. These families need our vote. Those toddlers need our vote. And I am here to stand with a welcoming Eau Claire to say, we vote. And some politicians need to be afraid of us. Thank you very much.
For El Centro de Conexión, the Chippewa Valley, and Jonah. El Centro is kind of like a connection center for the people of the Chippewa Valley, resources for the Latinos in the area. They do some events and things like that to support the community. And Jonah actually also does, they're very similar, they actually work hand in hand. And Jonah is a faith-based organization, and the church that it was originally established out of supports the Mexican community by providing a location for the mobile consulate, mobile Mexican consulate, and so that those people that are here can obtain their documents, obtain legal advice, and just kind of any other resources that they're needing during that time. So it's kind of what these groups are doing.
So if people wanted to become involved or help out, how would they do that?
They can sign up via email. They can go to, we've got some cards here, so you can reach prdavea@gmail.com for Jonah. El Centro de Conexión they're online as well, or by signing up here today on one of their lists. They can also call some of the people, Dave Anderson, he's a former pastor here in Eau Claire, or Gerardo Licon, a university professor who's the former president of El Centro de Conexión.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for your energy, for standing up, for coming out, for recognizing that we are all in this together. Friends, we are all in this together. When we see children at the border being ripped from their parents, we will not let that happen. Those values are not the values of our community, they're not the values of our country, they're not the values of this world. As you may have seen on the news, I'm now the acting president of the Eau Claire City Council. And it makes me, thank you. It makes me so incredibly proud to see all of you come out today and say that we're going to be a welcoming community here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Thank you. We understand that our strength is in recognizing the humanity in each of us. That capacity in each of us to do good. The love that we bring into the world every day. The transformation that is possible because of it. Let us resolve to recognize that humanity and to use that as the change that we want to see, that brighter day that we all know is possible. We're going to need to take to the streets like we are today. We're going to need to talk to our neighbors. We're going to need to make sure we're organized. We're going to make sure we vote. We're going to make sure all of our friends vote. We're going to plant new seeds in the ground so they can become something beautiful. Let us keep in mind those families who all they're looking for is a chance, potentially, to flee hardship, to flee hatred, violence. And they are only looking for that opportunity for a community that welcomes them. That's what they're looking for. And we recognize that we're all stronger together and that it's together in our humanity that our better selves can shine forward in love. Thank you.
Buenos dias. My name is Gerardo Licon, and I am a board member of El Centro de Conexión de Chippewa Valley, a local nonprofit that focuses on building the best relationship possible between the growing Latino community in the Chippewa Valley and everyone else here. So thank you very much for being here. I'd like to talk to you from two particular vantage points. One is from being the son of undocumented immigrants. And the other is myself as a historian of immigration. So my parents came to, well, actually I should go back to my grandfather. My grandfather was a bracero in the 1940s and 50s. And since the 1940s and 50s, he started coming to the United States, not because he wanted to move to the United States, but because there was opportunity. And so he would come to the United States probably about for one season, about every 5 years, 5 to 10 years. He would come for a season, make some money, go back to Mexico, and be with his family and try to build the best life possible for himself in Mexico. So he's not coming to move here. And most immigrants that come here do not come because they want to live in the United States necessarily. It's because they're in a situation that they need to get out of. They're in dire straits, and they need to find a solution. 20 years later, my parents decide to come to the United States in the 1970s. And they came initially undocumented. And their initial plan was just to make money for a few months and then move back. They have yet to move back. Then I was born, and then we ended up creating a life here, but they didn't come with that intention. There's all this, there's this criminalization of talking of immigrants as criminals. And the act of coming undocumented is increasingly being criminalized. And people forget that it's not a felony, that it's not, there's all these efforts to try to make it a more and more serious crime than it's ever been. My generation, my brother, myself, my cousins, we've been very fortunate to grow up in the United States and take advantage of the opportunities that my parents weren't. For my father, for example, had a first grade education, and then they would pull him out to work in the fields because they couldn't, that's what they had to do to survive as a family. My mother got a 6th grade education, and there it had to do with patriarchy. It was, you're a woman, why do you need more than 6th grade education? So they pulled her out of school, and she wanted to be a teacher. Well, now her 2 sons are professors. I have other cousins that have PhDs as well. I have 3 cousins that have gotten medical degrees. We have really benefited from the United States, and we're not criminals.
That's right.
So the other vantage point is myself as a historian of immigration. Our current immigration system, our laws, are based on the Immigration Act of 1965. And the Immigration Act of 1965 had 2 main points. One of them had to do with employment, skilled employment. And people forget when they say, just apply, come in legally. There is no legal way for people who are unskilled and who do not have family in the U.S. already to be able to legally come to the United States.
Yeah, turn down H-2A.
So that's one part of it. And then ironically, especially right now, is the other part of it, is that one of the main points, allegedly, of the Immigration Act of 1965 is family reunification. And then now they want to talk about family reunification as their own version of what they think is chain migration. Another thing with regards to immigration, immigration law. Right, these are points that just don't get brought up, and maybe a lot of people don't know, so which is why I bring it up. There is a limit on how many people can come from an individual country throughout the world of 7% from whatever country. It doesn't matter how big or small the country is, nor how close it is to the United States or how far away. And so Mexico is a very large country. It's right next door, and there's no special circumstances for its size or for its location. So as a result, the people who apply from Mexico who have an opportunity of a venue, an avenue for them to apply, they have an average wait of 17 years to come to the United States legally. And a lot of people don't know that. Or because they know someone who came from somewhere else and was able to come here quicker, they don't realize that it's not the same for everyone else. There's a 17-year wait, and I have 2 cousins that are in Minnesota right now. One waited 19 years and the other 17. Now, we're all here for different reasons, and I want to thank you very much for being here. You know, some people are here because, you know, care about this because they are undocumented. Some people care because they can relate, because like myself, you know people who are undocumented. For others, you know, it could be because you're a Christian and you believe it's the Christian thing to do. For others, it might be because, you know, it's become more of a Democratic issue, of a Democratic Party issue. But I want to encourage you all and encourage others to think of it in terms of being human beings, about being good to other human beings, about seeing each other as people who deserve dignity. Everyone deserves dignity. And so I'll just, I did want to call attention to some of your boards as well. Love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Seeking asylum is not a crime. Sin papeles, sin miedo. Children are not political pawns. Abolish ICE. Reunite families, but also no cages for families. Thanks again, all of you, for being here. Have a great day.
Good morning. My name is Pastor David Anderson. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor, and together with my wife, Joyce, we chair the Jonah Immigration Task Force. I'm also a member of the El Centro de Conexión Chippewa Valley on the board. And the Jonah Immigration Task Force has a lawyer whose name is Carolina on our task force, and she warned us back on the 28th of December that this was coming, that there was a lot of talk about it already. And so we asked her to be with us today to update us, try to give us the latest on where things are and some hints about what's coming next, what those who believe that they're in power might try to do next. And so she wasn't able to be with us, and so I'm going to read her letter.
Where is she?
She is busy marching somewhere else in Minneapolis and working as an immigration attorney. So for the next few minutes, I'm not me. I'm going to be Carolina. My name is Carolina, and I am an immigration attorney with an office in Eau Claire, also in St. Paul. I'm sorry I couldn't join you in person today, but I had to be up in the cities for work and for a march there. I have made 4 trips to the border to represent detained families, and I can tell you that separating families at the border is horrific and needs to end.
Yes.
And I can tell you that holding families together is not a solution. Almost all of these families are fleeing horrific domestic and gang-related violence.
Yes.
As we know, the Trump administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy to prosecute, and also persecute, I could add, families who appear between border checkpoints to be prosecuted for illegal entry, which is a federal misdemeanor. In order to apply this to parents, they separated the adults from their children because children can't be put in federal jails. There are also multiple reports of parents being separated from their children at border checkpoints, which is not legal either. Compounding this problem were asylum seekers presenting themselves at the border checkpoint to ask for asylum, a completely legal option.
That's right.
And being told they couldn't claim asylum, which is not legal. So their only option would be to wait indefinitely in Mexico or try to cross the border between checkpoints. This practice started under the Trump administration. We know that kids were separated from their parents going back to 2017. We know at least 2,300 kids have been separated from their parents. There is no law requiring this. There are no, by the way, there are no family detention centers in Wisconsin. The closest ones are, closer than I thought, in Chicago.
Overloaded.
President Trump signed an executive order to stop the practice that he started. However, there has been no plan for reuniting the kids. The plan appears to require that the parents give up their own immigration cases in order to be reunited with their kids, which may also force the kids to give up their immigration cases. This reunification process is absurd. They should have kept track of the kids belonging to which parents. A federal court in San Diego has ordered the government to reunite families within 14 days for children under 5 years old and within 30 days for all other children. There have also been discussions of doing DNA testing, but there are obvious privacy concerns about creating a DNA database of immigrants. Some have called for a single staging area for families, but this is the same as family detention, and kids do not belong behind bars. Family detention is prison. These are asylum seekers at our border, and they should not be imprisoned. Kara says, what can you do? Asks, what can you do to help? You can do a lot. Call Ron Johnson. Call Tammy Baldwin. Call Ron Kine. Let them know that you oppose family separations and family detention, both. I should not receive additional funding for detention beds in facilities.
That's right.
Families and their children do not belong behind bars while they ask for asylum. Call every day and tell them this. We need to keep this issue in the forefront. Donate your time and money to local immigration nonprofits. Eventually and hopefully, these families will be released and will need legal services to fight for their asylum cases. Catholic Charities does many of these cases in Wisconsin. Speak to your neighbors and friends and family about the issue. We need to keep this at the forefront. Thank you. And I would add, get to know your neighbors. Get to know your Latinx neighbors. Get to know your Muslim neighbors. Get to know any neighbors that are close to you. Lalo talked about why people are here. And I feel like I need to say why I'm here since I'm wearing this. I'm here because it fits in the tradition that I come out of. You shall not wrong or oppress an immigrant, for you were immigrants in the land of Egypt. Cursed be anyone who deprives the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow of justice. All the people shall say amen.
Amen.
The Lord watches over the immigrant. He upholds the orphan and the widow, but the way of the wicked he brings to ruin. And the sign over here says, love your neighbor as yourself. There actually is a place in Scripture that says, love the immigrant as yourself. It does not get any clearer than that.
Amen.
I'm a little short, so I hope you guys can hear me. Thank you guys so much for coming. You don't even know how heartfelt that this is. I do want to make a point though. If you look around, you will see people that look like you a lot more than you do like me, and there's a reason for that. That is the fear that has been instilled in these people, and we're gonna try to change that so that we can see them out here fighting for their rights too. As a little girl, I was always fascinated by the stories that my parents shared about their youth, of a country that was so distant yet almost magical, as they would tell it. So different from any life I had and any life experiences. My father is a really gifted storyteller, and so I was always a little bit more drawn to his stories. And perhaps in hindsight, it was that undeniable sadness that stayed in the shadow of his eyes while remembering past times that intrigued me to discover its origins. There were stories of mischief, hiding his abuelito's food cart and watching his tios get blamed for it, juggling 2 girls at the same time and trying not to get caught, his abuela's tradition of serving him hot chocolate on his birthday, being invited to play with a local band to serenade in the neighborhood, and most importantly, driving his dad's 1965 Impala with his infamous self-dubbed name of Johnny decaled on the side. Those were the good times. But there was also the reality of when there were struggles and suffering. Stories of learning to navigate the bus system of Juarez, one of the biggest cities in Mexico, at the age of 6, because it was his responsibility to take his father lunch every day. Imagine your kindergartner or first grader riding alone for an hour, having to navigate different buses to get on and off, spending 2 hours with a bunch of strangers. Watching his mother scrape the remnants of frijoles out of the pan as her portion of dinner for that night. Sharing a single piece of bread and Coke with his father as their lunch in the 90-degree unforgiving weather of Juarez. Having to hide the holes in the soles of his dress shoes because he didn't have another pair and didn't have money to buy one. Past times of smelling the sweet scents of fresh bread because none of his friends or him had enough money to even purchase one. He always wondered if food tasted as wonderful as he remembers them, or if it was the hunger. He was and has always been determined to afford his children, and now his grandchildren, the gift of life where hunger is not a way of life, where children can enjoy the luxury of being children and the fear of humiliation for being poor is no longer a factor of worry. I am a proud child of immigrants, of 2 undocumented, loving parents who were selfless in their decision to risk their lives for a chance at life filled with aspirations, dreams, educational opportunities, and most importantly, hope. To love thyself, take pride in your culture and heritage, and never give up. And so if it seems that I take it personal, it's because it is personal. Those parents could have been my parents. That child could have been me. I could have been that parent, devastated and inconsolable because the government ripped my child from my hands and now can't tell me where my child is. We, and I say we because we are all responsible. We are setting up these children for a life of failure, for long-term emotional turmoil and unimaginable psychological damage. To give you an example, I did some research. The American Psychological Association has done studies on the effects of separating children from their deported parents. I wasn't surprised to find out that these children suffer from PTSD, distrust of institutions and authority, go figure, behavior problems, sleep disorders, anxiety, depression, and social isolation as some of the many trauma. Data also shows that longer the parents and children are separated, the greater the psychological suffering and reduces educational attachment and attainment. So the nation's top authority of our mental and emotional health says that they support a practical, humane immigration policy that considers the needs of immigrants, particularly immigrant families. So while they understand that there is a need to balance our national security, they oppose policies that make it easier to deport immigrants and separate families. Those are the most educated on knowledge of the integral human system know that the policies are detrimental, and yet their warnings are ignored. Discrimination, isolation, and fear should never be experienced by any child.
It's not rocket science.
Amen. So, for those who say that we are a land of laws, I ask you, what kind of laws? Are we a land where morality and empathy is put on the back burner only to be replaced with divisive, cruel, and horrifying methods of human treatment?
No!
How do we as a nation justify vilifying immigrants for political gain, spreading lies, and reinforcing age-old racism and stereotypes just to placate those of like mind? Strong, Mr. President, is not you preying on the vulnerable, the poor, and the hungry. Strong is not threatening or using tactics that instill fear into families who need us the most. Strong is not being a coward.
Yes.
Strong is standing up for what is right in the face of adversity, when if you are standing alone, it is in your courage. Doing what's right never meant it was easy, but it allows us to continue to be a country we can be proud of. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the time is always right to do what is right.
Yes.
Continue to allow our government to violate such basic human rights of our children or any immigrant or refugee. We need to stand and say enough is enough. Our children are not pawns in the political battle to build a nonsensical wall. Our children are not hostages to be used as ransom in this game of manipulation for parents to elect deportation and relinquish their legal right to seek asylum. That is sick and immoral on levels no person should find acceptable. You cannot call yourself a Christian and support atrocities that go against the very core of God's teaching. Expect to have your moral compass questioned when you support child abuse, because that is child abuse. We will demand an explanation. We will not tire in our demand, and we will continue to be that thorn every time you Twitter, every time you speak, and every single time that you think we are not paying attention. We are not done with his tyranny and disregard for life. We will continue to fight with every fiber in our bones until this behavior is no longer tolerable or acceptable policy in this country. We owe that to our children and the future of this country. And on a side note, because I am so sick and tired people using this baseless argument, quit comparing immigrants to lifelong criminals. There is no comparison to a person who chooses a life of crime, who has little to no regard for their fellow human being, and obviously no respect for themselves. Immigrants are people who risk their lives to give their children a glimpse of an opportunity for something better. Be able to live without the fear of kidnapping, murder, or torture because they simply gave a police officer a drink of water, or they didn't give a classmate a pencil because they didn't have another one, or were outspoken about the atrocities of their daily life. Imagine how dire life must be that you are willing to risk your life and that of your child that you must treasure with only the items of on your back to a country that you have no guarantee of entrance. They come to work, they come to contribute, and they come to be part of the dream that we all have the privilege of living. They come to live. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity, said Nelson Mandela. And as a reminder to those who so staunchly oppose our immigrants, whose racism is alive and well in your adamant denial, I say thank you. Thank you to your everyday actions that you support undocumented labor. Every time you eat, drink, consume any food, you can rest assured immigration was a great source of labor. When you travel, enjoy the comforts of your hotel for your guy's trip or family vacation. Remember, your clean sheets, towels, and room service was brought to you by your local immigrant. And when you're sitting on your furniture, enjoying your Sunday night football game with all your friends and family, and gathering for a summer afternoon, all the materials and furniture you have in your house has likely been at the hands of immigrants. And even your retirement, you can thank undocumented labor for, because 70% of undocumented workers still pay all the taxes everyone does. So you can sit there and continue to collect your Social Security while remembering that some of those dollars you're enjoying were a contribution of the very people you condemn. And your daily purchases continue to support undocumented labor and wages. So truly thank you, because even in your hypocrisy, your actions are a vote for immigration. The next part is for those brave souls that did come out here. Para mi gente, seguiremos luchando con ustedes. Jamás toleraremos tanto abuso, maltratamiento, injusticia y violaciones de nuestros derechos humanos, más o menos nuestros hijos. Siempre estaremos con ustedes. Sí se puede. So to share something personal with you, 2 weeks ago, I felt hopeless. I was lost, sick to my stomach. I had no idea what to do, and I couldn't wrap my brain around so much hatred and evil and disregard for innocent children, those who rely on us to protect them the most. And I didn't know what to do. But today, as I look out into the crowd, this diverse crowd, and see people who do not look like me, I find hope. I see a future where the efforts of our trailblazers like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Martin Luther King Jr., Harvey Milk, Edison Uno, and many, many more become the norm. Cesar Chavez said, "Our language is the reflection of ourselves. There has to be someone who is willing to do it, who is willing to take whatever risks are required. Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. Sí se puede, mi gente, sí se puede."
Morning. All right. La lucha in Spanish translates to the struggle. So first off, I want to recognize the people who are not here today. La lucha of those who live in constant fear against a government that hunts them down and puts them in cages. La lucha of mixed families of mixed statuses who exist in fear for themselves and of their family, avoiding the eye in fear of deportation. La lucha of those who, despite these risks, continue their fight for immigrant rights. Second, I want to recognize that those stories of loss, grief, and exploitation that have been silenced. As the voicelessness of a community has been maintained through a system of white supremacy and of fear, we need to be their voice. Third, I'd like us to recognize that families do not leave their homeland because they want to. They do so out of necessity. They flee to escape violence and to find refuge in a country that to them is synonymous with opportunity. Seeking asylum is not illegal. As a Latina woman who has grown up in Wisconsin, I've seen firsthand how these policies have created generational trauma. I've seen the dreams of my peers be crushed because of their lack of status. I've seen parents whose worth within this country is measured only by how much corporations can exploit them. And I've seen the unwillingness of the American government to provide protections over a population that has existed within this country since its beginnings. As an organizer for Next Gen Wisconsin, us young people are calling bullshit on those in power who continue these hateful policies. We demand to be represented equitably and fairly, and we will work until we see those in power who represent all of us and not just a few. So I encourage you all today to continue this momentum and dedicate not only your resources but your time to these organizations you see here today. We demand the unification of families. We demand the end of mass incarceration, and we demand the end of deportation, because families belong together. Gracias.
Thank you all so much for coming out this morning. What an amazing turnout. My name is Joe Luganville, and I'm the president of the Eau Claire School Board. And like all of you, I am tired. Who else is tired? I am freaking angry. Who else is angry? And I am motivated. Who else is motivated? You know, Lalo spoke a little bit earlier from El Centro, and he said that his family has benefited from coming here to the United States. Well, our country has benefited from families like Lalo's all across this country. I want to recognize and thank you all for coming, and I want to give a shout out to some of my favorite signs. Number one, hurting children is not patriotic. Number two, ice belongs in the Arctic. And number three, keep families together. You know, it's getting a little balmy out today. I've already applied sunscreen twice. But if today is hot for us, imagine what it's like for these young children who haven't seen their parents. Imagine the heat in those cages. Imagine their comfort level. Imagine the trauma that they are experiencing. Children deserve compassion. They have a right to opportunities and an education, not to be confined to an existence of confinement and entrapment like some sort of animal. Over the past few weeks, we have all seen the gut-wrenching and maddening photographs, videos, and audio of these travesties. It was chilling for me, and I'm sure for all of you, to hear the voices of these children crying, asking for their parents. Because any government that is willing to treat just one child that way is capable of treating any child that way, and that should scare the hell out of us. Any government that is willing to allow this practice to continue is not a government dedicated to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and any elected official who stays silent right now deserves to lose their job. Even with the political theater, with the executive order that was signed by our president, ending a practice that he instituted, thousands of children still remain detained and not yet reunited with their parents. This is our shame as a country. And I sometimes hear online, sometimes well-meaning folks posting that our country is better than this. And I challenge that, because are we really better than this? Our country and its history is one of systematic oppression, enslavement, detainment, incarceration, internment, torture, deportation, and separation. That's who we are. But based on the folks here today and the action that's happening, that could be different. At the national level, Senator Tammy Baldwin is co-sponsoring an act called the Keep Families Together Act, which would restore a more humane approach for all individuals seeking asylum in this country, and she deserves a shout out for that. And there are also calls from a number of national elected officials now, including our own congressman from the Madison area, Mark Pocan, to abolish ICE and crack down on the agency's blanket directive to target and round up individuals and families. There are a number of state-level candidates here today, and I encourage you to check them out. Most of them are wearing their bling, their pins, and their stickers, so you can find them. At the state level, we need to fix this. Our governor has just deployed more troops to aid in border enforcement, and many of our area representatives in the Assembly and Senate have remained silent and complicit to that end. Our governor's office has refused to answer questions about family separation and family detention, stating that this is a federal issue. And all the while, our governor is really interested in this new push about trauma and trauma-informed care for children. But apparently he only cares about trauma-informed care if your kid is white and speaks English. Our Attorney General has pulled the same games and said this is just a federal issue. He's passed the buck. Well, this is not merely a federal, state, or local issue. This is a human rights issue. But I'm an optimist. I'm a positive guy. So I have to share some positive things that are happening. At the local school level, we've made some gains. After the immigration ban that Dr. Ducksworth-Lawton talked about, our school district became the first, before Milwaukee, before Madison, to declare itself as a sanctuary school district. We've worked with partners including Jonah and El Centro to empower our immigrant children and families, connect them with resources and support. We're starting in Eau Claire a new family conversation kits program to get kids and families having conversations about diverse topics. And our first that we're rolling out is all about Latinx issues. And those will be at our area libraries. And we're now looking at the possibility in our school district of starting a Spanish dual immersion school in our district. So change is possible, and it starts at the local level. Here in Eau Claire, we have amazing people who are doing amazing things every day. Their compassion and commitment is an inspiration, but the gains we make cannot stop at the local level. Our work must be intersectional, because whether it is our immigrant neighbors, indigenous people, folks of color, folks with disabilities, or our LGBTQ family, and other marginalized communities, these struggles are a basic struggle for dignity and human rights. So today, I have some homework for you as a school board president. I have some homework for you. I need you to make a promise to yourself and to your friends that you will not sit out the midterms, that you will register to vote, that you will register 10, 15, 20 of your friends, that you will visit with the organizers at the tables today and find ways to make an impact, that you will take some time, knock on doors, organize events, hold forums, write letters to the editor, write and call your legislators, show up at their office and sit on the floor until they take a meeting with you. Maybe run for office, because this is a crucial time in our country's history. And each and every one of us needs to show up. So after I talk, I think Jesse's going to come back up after I talk. Because today we start organizing, we're going to protest, we're going to cause some good trouble. That's what we have to continue to do, and we can't let up. So thank you all for being here, braving the heat, and let's get to work.
For our speakers, we are going to march around the exterior of the park. I think we'll start maybe right over here and just walk the exterior. Feel free to stay afterwards and, like Joe was saying, connect with ways to be able to, register to vote and make a difference. And feel free to show your signs after we walk around. So thank you again.
Keep up, Henry and Eli, everybody.
Awesome. Going. All right, come on, kiddos.
And I think with Walker here, you know, 35 to every day makes 5 phone calls.
How about the rest of you?
Best way to send a message.
Did you get pulled over for a crash?
And like, doesn't make everyone